Hello, my little love. Did you have a good day today? I hope something made you smile. Now take a slow breath, relax your shoulders, and let your mind get soft and quiet. It's time for a gentle bedtime story. The stars are shining softly outside your window tonight, and the moon is glowing with a calm, peaceful light. Everything feels safe and warm. The night air is cool and gentle, and somewhere far away, an owl hoots softly in the darkness. Everything in the world is settling down to sleep, and you can settle down too, feeling cozy and protected. And now, my little love, let me gently tell you a calming story called The Tiger Who Played Music in a Funny Way. Once upon a time, in a gentle mountain covered with soft green trees, there lived a kind tiger. This tiger was not scary at all. He had warm orange fur with beautiful black stripes that ran along his sides and back like painted ribbons. And his eyes were big and friendly, the color of warm honey glowing in sunlight. He loved to walk slowly through the forest, taking his time with each step, listening to the birds singing their quiet songs in the branches high above. The sunlight came through the leaves in soft golden streams, making patterns on the forest floor that looked like delicate lace made of light. Everything felt peaceful and calm, and the tiger felt happy just to be alive in such a beautiful place where every day brought new wonders. The tiger's home was a cozy cave on the side of the mountain, hidden behind some flowering bushes. Inside, the cave was dry and comfortable, with soft moss growing on the walls, like a velvet carpet, and a bed of dried leaves that rustled gently when the tiger lay down to rest. Every morning, when the first rays of sunshine came over the mountain peaks and painted the sky pink and gold, the tiger would wake up slowly, stretch his big paws one at a time, yawn widely showing his white teeth, and then pad softly out of his cave to greet the new day with gratitude and joy. One peaceful day, the tiger was walking near a clear, sparkling stream that wound through the forest like a silver ribbon. The water moved slowly over smooth, round stones that had been polished by the current for hundreds and hundreds of years until they gleamed like jewels. The water was so clear and pure that you could see straight to the bottom, where little silverfish darted back and forth, playing games with each other and hiding behind the pebbles. The stream made a gentle trickling sound, like the softest music. And it was one of the tiger's favorite places to visit when he wanted to think peaceful thoughts. The tiger stopped to take a drink. He lowered his big striped head carefully and lapped at the water with his pink tongue. The water was cool and refreshing, tasting clean and pure like it had come straight from the mountain snow that melted in the warm spring sun. He drank slowly, enjoying every sip, savoring the coolness, and then he sat down on the soft grass beside the stream. The grass was thick and green and dotted with tiny white flowers that smelled sweet like honey and vanilla mixed together. The tiger looked up at the sky. It was the most beautiful blue you could ever imagine. The kind of blue you only see on perfect days when there isn't a single cloud and the air is crystal clear. White clouds drifted by slowly and lazily, changing shape as they moved across the endless sky. One cloud looked like a rabbit with long ears, then it slowly changed into a butterfly with delicate wings, then into a flower with many petals. The tiger watched them drift across the sky, feeling peaceful and content and grateful for the beauty all around him. The tiger felt very happy inside, and he wanted to make music to express that happiness. He had always loved music, the cheerful songs of the birds in the morning, the rustling of leaves dancing in the wind, the babbling of the stream over the stones, the buzzing of bees visiting flowers. But he wanted to make his own music, to share the happiness and joy he felt inside his heart. He tried to roar, opening his mouth wide and letting out a sound from deep in his chest. But his roar was too loud roar, and it echoed through the forest like thunder rumbling across the sky. The sound bounced off the mountains and seemed to shake the very trees. The little birds in the trees got frightened by the loud noise and flew away quickly, their wings flapping in panic, their tiny hearts beating fast. A family of rabbits who had been peacefully nibbling clover hopped hurriedly into their underground burrow, their white tails disappearing into the darkness. Even the fish in the stream got scared and swam away to hide under the rocks and in the shadows where they felt safe. The beautiful butterfly that had been floating nearby fluttered away as fast as its delicate wings could carry it. The tiger felt sad and disappointed. His big ears drooped down against his head, and his tail, which had been swishing happily back and forth, hung down low and still. He didn't want to scare anyone or make anyone afraid. He wanted to make gentle, beautiful sounds that would make everyone feel happy and calm, not loud sounds that frightened them away and made them hide. So he thought and thought, sitting very still under a tall tree with leaves that rustled softly in the gentle breeze. The breeze was warm and carried the sweet scent of wildflowers and pine trees and all the good smells of the forest. The tiger sat there for a long, long time, thinking about what he could do. The sun moved slowly across the bright blue sky, creating long shadows that stretched across the forest floor and changed position as the hours passed. A beautiful butterfly with orange and black wings landed on a purple flower near the tiger, opening and closing its delicate wings slowly in the warm sunshine. The tiger watched it and felt calm and peaceful. Birds began to come back, landing on branches far away at first, then gradually coming closer. Then, suddenly, the tiger had an idea. A funny, silly idea that made him want to giggle and smile. The tiger discovered quite by accident that when he moved his body in a certain special way, he could make a sound that was like a little trumpet. It was a funny, gentle sound toot that bubbled up from deep inside him and came out sounding silly and cheerful and happy. The tiger tried it again too, and this time he couldn't help but giggle at how funny the sound was. It made him feel joyful and playful. He practiced and practiced, making the sound over and over, experimenting with different ways of moving. Soon he could play simple, happy tunes with different notes. He could make high notes that sounded bright and cheerful, and low notes that sounded warm and cozy. He could make fast rhythms that made you want to dance, and slow rhythms that made you want to sway gently. The sound was soft and silly, and it made the tiger feel absolutely joyful. After a while, the animals who had been frightened by the tiger's roar began to come back, one by one. They heard this new sound, this gentle, funny music, and they were curious about it. What could be making such an interesting noise? A little rabbit poked its head out of the burrow, its pink nose twitching as it tested the air to make sure everything was safe. It hopped a little closer, then a little closer, its long ears standing straight up and listening carefully. Finally, it was sitting right near the tiger, close enough to see the tiger's friendly face. The rabbit's ears stood up tall, listening carefully to every note. And then it began to wiggle its nose happily in time to the music, moving its whole head in rhythm. More rabbits came hopping over slowly, their fluffy white tails bobbing up and down as they moved. They formed a little semicircle around the tiger, all of them swaying to the music. The deer, who had been hiding deep in the thick forest where the trees grew close together, walked quietly through the trees to hear the music better. They moved gracefully on their slender legs, their hooves barely making a sound on the soft forest floor covered with fallen leaves and moss. Their large brown eyes were gentle and peaceful as they listened. Even the birds came back, landing on branches all around the tiger, creating a living audience in the trees. They perched on every available branch, their heads tilted to the side in that curious way birds have, listening intently to every note. Some of them began to chirp along softly, adding their own voices to the tiger's music. The butterflies returned too, landing on nearby flowers with their wings opening and closing gently in the warm sunlight. Almost like they were dancing to the rhythm, their delicate bodies swaying on the flower petals. Everyone loved the tiger's funny music. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes the tiger made a squeaky sound by accident, or a note that was a little too loud or a little too high. Sometimes he would lose his rhythm and have to start over. But none of that mattered because the music was made with a happy heart, and that's what truly mattered. The music was full of joy and kindness and love, and all the animals could feel those good feelings flowing from the tiger. They gathered closer and closer, finding comfortable spots to sit on the soft moss and grass, listening and smiling and feeling happy. The tiger discovered that he loved playing music for his friends. He loved seeing their happy faces and hearing them hum along. He loved how the music brought everyone together and made them all feel connected. So he decided to play his gentle tunes every single evening as the sun began to set. The sky would turn the most beautiful colors, soft shades of pink and orange and lavender and gold, and sometimes even touches of green and purple. The clouds would glow as if they were lit from within by magical candles. The forest became peaceful and quiet, except for the tiger's sweet, silly music floating through the air like a lullaby that wrapped around everyone like a warm blanket. All the animals would gather around at sunset, making this their special time together. It became the favorite part of everyone's day. The little rabbits would close their eyes and sway gently from side to side, their long ears moving with the rhythm of the music. The birds would tuck their heads under their soft wings, making soft, contented chirping sounds before they fell asleep. The squirrels would curl up in their cozy nests high in the trees, their bushy tails wrapped around them like fluffy blankets. The deer would lie down on beds of soft ferns, their legs folded beneath them gracefully, their eyes half closed in peaceful contentment. And the tiger would play softly and lovingly, making everyone feel sleepy and warm and loved and safe. As the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, appearing one by one, like tiny candles being lit by invisible hands, the tiger's music grew softer and softer and softer, until it was just a gentle whisper of sound, barely louder than the breeze rustling the leaves. Then, when the last golden light had faded from the sky and the moon had risen full and bright and beautiful, casting silver light over the sleeping forest, the tiger would stop playing. Everyone would drift off to sleep right where they were, dreaming peaceful dreams about sunshine and flowers and gentle music. And all the beautiful things in life. The tiger would look around at all his sleeping friends with love in his heart, feeling happy and grateful that he could share his special music with them and bring them joy. Then he would walk slowly and quietly back to his cozy cave, his big paws making soft padding sounds on the forest path. He would curl up on his comfortable bed of dried leaves, close his amber eyes, and fall asleep too, feeling content and peaceful. His last thought before sleeping was always about how lucky and blessed he was to have such wonderful friends and such a beautiful home in this magical forest. And every night after that, the forest was filled with gentle music and soft sounds of sleeping animals. All safe and warm and peaceful together, protected by the love they shared. The night grows softer now, and the forest is quiet and still. Everything feels calm and safe, and now a new story begins, slowly and peacefully. The wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it another tale on its gentle breath. And let me tell you about two brothers whose story teaches us about kindness and sharing and how our hearts can grow warmer when we think of others instead of only ourselves. Long, long ago, in a time when the world moved more slowly, and people lived close to the land and knew the names of all their neighbors, there was a small village nestled between gentle rolling hills. The hills rolled like waves on a calm ocean, covered with soft grass that turned golden in the autumn when the harvest came and bright green in the spring when new life appeared. The village was made up of small houses with thatched roofs made of dried straw, and smoke from cooking. Fires would rise peacefully into the sky every evening, creating thin gray ribbons against the sunset. Gardens full of beautiful flowers surrounded every house, roses and chrysanthemums and morning glories that climbed up wooden trellises reaching toward the sun. Vegetable patches grew nearby, where orange pumpkins swelled and grew round on their twisting vines. Green beans climbed tall, wooden poles reaching for the sky, and cabbages grew fat and round and healthy. In this peaceful village lived two brothers who had been born in the same house and had played together as children. The older brother was named Nolbu, and the younger brother was named Heungbu. They had grown up together, eating meals at the same wooden table, sleeping in the same room, playing the same childhood games in the same dusty courtyards. But as they grew older and became men with families of their own, they became very different from each other, as different as night and day, as different as winter and summer. Nolbu, the older brother, had inherited the family house when their parents passed away and went to rest with the ancestors. It was a large house with many rooms, a wide courtyard, where chickens pecked at the ground, and a big garden that stretched out behind it full of fruit trees and vegetable plots. The house had strong wooden beams that had been carved by master craftsmen, a solid roof that didn't leak even in the heaviest rain, and warm floors in the winter that were heated from below. Nolbu also had a large storehouse filled with rice and grain and all good things, big clay jars full of white rice, heavy sacks of barley and wheat, dried vegetables hanging from the wooden rafters, dried fish wrapped in paper, jars of preserved fruits, and even some gold coins hidden away in a wooden chest buried beneath the floor. Nolbu had many things, more than enough for himself and his family, and certainly plenty to share with others who had less. But sometimes, quite often actually, Nolbu forgot to think about others or their needs. He would sit in his comfortable house on cold winter days when the wind howled outside, eating warm rice and hot soup with vegetables and maybe even a little meat, while thinking only of himself and what he wanted and what would make his life even more comfortable. He wasn't mean in a scary or cruel way. He didn't go out of his way to hurt people on purpose, but he had a hard time remembering to be generous and kind and to think about those who were struggling. His heart had become a little bit closed, like a door that had been shut tight for too long and the hinges had grown rusty. Heungbu, the younger brother, had received much less when their parents died. According to the old customs, the older son received most of the inheritance. Heungbu lived in a much smaller house at the very edge of the village, almost in the fields. The house was simple and old, with just 3 small rooms that were barely big enough for his growing family. The roof sometimes leaked when it rained hard, drip, 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 and they had to place clay pots and wooden buckets on the floor to catch the water. The walls had cracks that let in the cold winter wind, whistling through and making everyone shiver. But Heungbu lived there as happily as he could with his wife, who had a kind smile and patient heart, and his children, several children of different ages who laughed and played and filled the small house with noise and life and love. Heungbu and his family didn't have very much at all. Some days there was barely enough rice to make a thin porridge for everyone, and they would water it down, so there would be enough for each person to have at least a little. Their clothes were old and had been patched many times, with different colored fabrics sewn over the holes and worn spots. In winter they had to huddle together under thin blankets to stay warm, sharing their body heat. But Heungbu had something very special, something that couldn't be bought with money or stored in a jar or locked in a chest. He had a warm, generous heart that loved to help others, even when he had almost nothing himself. Even when he had little, he would always share what he had with anyone who needed it. If a neighbor was sick with fever, Heungbu would bring them a bowl of soup made from vegetables from his tiny garden. If someone was cold, he would offer them his own thin jacket, even if it meant he would be cold himself. His heart was like a warm fire that never went out, always giving light and heat to others, never counting the cost. One beautiful spring morning, when the cherry blossoms were blooming in soft pink clouds that looked like they were floating in the air, and the air smelled sweet and fresh and full of the promise of new life, Heungbu was working hard in his small garden. The cherry blossoms drifted down like gentle snow, landing on his dark hair and on his shoulders and on the ground all around him. He was digging slowly in the earth with a simple wooden hoe that had been used for many years, preparing the soil to plant seeds for vegetables to feed his hungry family. The soil was soft and dark and rich, full of nutrients from composted leaves. It smelled earthy and good, like life itself, like possibility and hope. Birds sang sweetly in the trees overhead, cheerful, bright songs that made Heungbu smile even though his back ached from bending over. A soft breeze made the leaves whisper and dance, bringing the scent of flowers from far away. Heungbu worked carefully and methodically, turning over the soil one section at a time, removing small stones and roots, and breaking up the large clumps of earth with his hoe. His children played nearby, laughing and chasing each other around the small garden, their voices bright with joy. His wife was hanging laundry to dry on a rope line, the wet clothes flapping gently in the breeze. It was a peaceful, ordinary morning, and despite having so little, Heungbu felt grateful for it, for his health, for his family, for the warm sun, for another day of life. As Heungbu worked, bent over his hoe, he heard a tiny, sad sound. It was so quiet that at first he thought he might have imagined it, that it might have been the wind or a leaf scraping against another leaf. He stopped working and listened carefully, holding very still and quiet, barely breathing. There it was again, a small, weak chirping sound, like a baby bird in distress, calling for its mother. Heungbu looked around gently, his eyes searching every corner of the small garden. He checked near the vegetable patch where the beans were just starting to sprout, near the wooden fence that surrounded the property, under the flowering bushes with their white blooms. Finally, he found where the sound was coming from. There, lying on the soft grass near the base of a tall tree, was a baby swallow. The little bird was so tiny that it would fit easily in the palm of Heungbu's hand, small and fragile and helpless. Its feathers were still soft and downy, not yet the sleek adult feathers it would have someday. Its eyes were barely open, just little slits. It must have fallen from its nest high up in the tree, perhaps blown out by the wind or knocked out by accident. The baby swallow was chirping weakly, calling for its mother, and one of its tiny legs was bent at a strange angle that didn't look right. It was hurt and couldn't stand properly. Heungbu's heart filled with compassion immediately. He knelt down slowly and picked up the baby bird very, very carefully, cradling it gently in his warm, rough hands. His hands were calloused from work, rough and worn, but his touch was as soft as silk and as gentle as a feather. "Oh, you poor little one," he said in a voice barely louder than a whisper, full of tenderness. "Don't be afraid. Don't worry. I'll help you feel better. Everything will be all right. You're safe now." Heungbu took the baby swallow inside his small house, walking carefully so as not to jostle the injured bird. His children gathered around immediately, their eyes wide with concern and curiosity, all of them wanting to see and help. "Is the bird going to be okay, Father?" asked his youngest daughter, her small voice worried and her eyes beginning to fill with tears. "Will it die?" "No, sweet one," Heungbu said gently, smiling at her to ease her worry. "We'll take good care of it, and it will get better. You'll see." Heungbu made a soft little bed for the bird out of scraps of cotton and cloth, creating a cozy nest that would keep the bird warm and comfortable. Then he examined the bird's hurt leg very carefully, moving slowly and gently so he wouldn't cause any more pain to the already suffering creature. The leg was injured but not broken too badly. If it was cared for properly, it would heal. Heungbu carefully wrapped the tiny, delicate leg with a strip of soft fabric, making a splint that would help the leg heal straight and strong. He worked with steady hands and a calm heart, and the little bird seemed to understand somehow that he was trying to help, that these big hands meant no harm. Every single day after that, Heungbu took care of the baby swallow as if it were one of his own children, with the same love and attention and devotion. In the morning, as soon as he woke up, he would check on the bird first thing. He would give it tiny bits of food, small insects that he caught carefully, bits of cooked rice that he mashed up until they were soft enough for a baby bird to eat, anything gentle and nutritious that would help it grow strong. He would offer it drops of clean water, letting the bird sip carefully from his fingertip. He spoke to it in a soft, kind voice, telling it gentle stories about the sky and the trees and all the places it would fly when it was better. Painting pictures with his words of the freedom and joy that awaited it. The children would sit quietly nearby and watch, learning important lessons about compassion and kindness. And caring for those who are weaker, lessons that would stay with them their whole lives. Slowly, day by day, week by week, as spring turned toward summer, the little bird grew stronger and healthier. Its feathers became fuller and shinier, changing gradually from the downy baby feathers to sleek adult feathers that gleamed in the light like polished metal. Its chirps became louder and more confident, no longer weak and frightened but strong and cheerful. And most wonderfully, its hurt leg healed slowly but surely, gradually but definitely. The injury got better. Soon the bird could stand on both legs without wobbling. Then it could hop from one place to another. Then it could flutter its wings, practicing for the day when it would soar through the sky. The children watched with growing joy and excitement as the bird grew stronger. They would clap softly and cheer when it hopped across the floor for the first time. And they would giggle with delight when it tried to fly and managed only a small flutter before landing again. Heungbu's wife would smile warmly as she watched, seeing how her husband's kindness was teaching their children such important lessons about caring for others. And about the value of every living creature, no matter how small. When spring had fully turned to summer, and the days grew long and warm and the sun shone bright in the clear blue sky, and the whole world seemed full of life and energy, the baby swallow was fully and completely healed. Its feathers were beautiful dark blue on the back and white on the belly, with that distinctive forked tail that swallows have. It looked strong and healthy. It was ready to fly, ready to leave the nest and join the other swallows that swooped and dove through the air with such grace, catching insects and singing their cheerful, chattering songs. Heungbu knew in his heart it was time to let the bird go. One peaceful morning when the sky was clear and bright and the breeze was gentle and warm, he carefully picked up the swallow one last time. The whole family came with him, his wife, his children, all of them walking slowly together to the middle of their small garden. It was a moment they would all remember forever. Heungbu held the swallow up gently in his open palms, lifting it toward the endless blue sky, toward freedom and the life it was meant to live. "You're all better now, little friend," he said, his voice warm with affection but also a little sad because he would miss this small creature. "It's time for you to fly free and be happy. Go and find your family in the sky. Live a good, long life full of sunshine and joy." The swallow looked at Heungbu with its bright, intelligent eyes, and in that moment, there seemed to be understanding between them. It chirped once, twice, 3 times a song that seemed to say thank you, thank you, thank you, a song of gratitude and farewell. Then it spread its wings wide, feeling the air beneath them, and with a quick, joyful movement, it launched itself into the air. It flew up, up, up into the bright sky, its wings beating strongly and surely, no hesitation, no fear, just pure freedom and joy. The children shouted with happiness, jumping up and down and clapping their hands. Heungbu's wife wiped tears from her eyes, moved by the beauty and sadness of the moment. The swallow circled around them once, twice, 3 times, flying in graceful loops against the blue sky, as if saying goodbye and thank you, as if blessing them for their kindness. Then it flew away to join a group of other swallows in the distance, becoming smaller and smaller until it was just a tiny speck against the endless blue, and then it was gone completely, disappeared into the vastness of the sky. Heungbu watched it disappear with a smile on his weathered face, feeling happy and grateful that he could help this small creature, that he could make a difference in one small life. His heart felt full and warm, the way it always did when he helped someone or something. The way it always did when he gave without expecting anything in return. Time passed softly and gently, like water flowing in a quiet stream. Summer gave way to autumn gradually, naturally. The leaves on the trees changed color slowly, turning beautiful shades of red and gold and orange and brown and purple. The air became cool and crisp, carrying the smell of fallen leaves and wood smoke from cooking fires and the earthy scent of harvest time. Farmers in the village worked hard, harvesting their crops from the fields and bringing in the rice and the grain and the vegetables before the winter cold arrived. The harvest season came, when the fields were full of ripe grain ready to be cut and gathered and stored away. One peaceful afternoon, when the sun was low in the sky and cast long golden shadows across the garden, and everything glowed with warm light, Heungbu was resting after a long day of hard work in the fields. He was sitting on the wooden step outside his small house, enjoying the cool evening air and watching his children play their games. The sky was beginning to turn pink and orange with the approaching sunset, and everything felt calm and peaceful. Suddenly, Heungbu heard a familiar sound, a cheerful chirping that he remembered from months before, a sound that made his heart jump with recognition. He looked up quickly, shading his eyes against the low sun, and there, flying toward him through the golden evening light, was a swallow. Not just any swallow, but the swallow he had helped, the one with the leg he had healed. Heungbu recognized it immediately by the way it flew, by the sound of its voice, by something indefinable that told his heart this was his friend returning. The swallow landed gently on a branch of the tree near Heungbu, the same tree where it had fallen from as a tiny baby bird. It chirped happily, bobbing its head up and down as if greeting an old friend, as if saying, "Hello, I remember you. I came back to see you." Then, very carefully and deliberately, it opened its small beak and dropped something into Heungbu's outstretched hand. It was a seed, just a single seed. But this was not just any ordinary seed, it was a special, magical seed that glowed softly with a warm, golden light. Like a tiny piece of the sun had been captured and placed in seed form. The seed was smooth and round, perfectly formed, and it felt warm to the touch, almost like it was alive. It seemed to pulse gently in Heungbu's palm, as if it had a tiny heartbeat of its own. The swallow chirped one more long, beautiful song that seemed to fill the whole garden. A song that seemed to say, "Thank you for your kindness and your pure heart. Plant this seed with love, and wonderful things will grow from it. This is my gift to you." Then the swallow spread its wings one final time and flew away again, soaring up into the colorful sunset sky. Its dark silhouette beautiful against the glowing orange and pink clouds. Heungbu held the magical seed carefully in both hands, feeling its gentle warmth spreading through his palms. His children gathered around, their eyes wide with wonder and amazement. "What is it, Father?" they asked, their voices hushed with awe. "What kind of seed is it?" Heungbu looked at the glowing seed and then at his children's curious faces. "It's a gift," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. "A gift for kindness. A gift that came because we helped someone without asking for anything in return." The very next morning, when the sun was just rising and painting the sky with soft colors and the dew still sparkled on the grass like thousands of tiny diamonds, Heungbu planted the magical seed carefully in the very best spot in his small garden. He chose a place where the sun would shine on it most of the day but where it would also have some shade in the hottest part of the afternoon. He dug a small hole in the dark, rich soil with his hands, placed the glowing seed gently inside, like he was tucking a baby into bed, and covered it carefully with the good earth. Then he watered it with cool, fresh water from the well, pouring the water slowly and carefully, making sure the soil was moist but not too wet. He patted the soil gently with his rough, kind hands and said a quiet prayer, asking that the seed would grow strong and healthy and whatever it was meant to become would be good. Every single day after that, Heungbu tended the seed with great care and attention and love. He watered it faithfully every morning when he first woke up and every evening before the sun set. He pulled weeds from around it as soon as they appeared, making sure nothing would compete with it for water or nutrients or sunlight. He spoke kind words to it as it grew, the way he spoke kind words to all living things, to his children, to his wife, to the animals, to the plants. He told it about the sunshine and the rain and how grateful he was. And the seed, feeling all this love and care, responded in a miraculous way. Within just a few days, something amazing happened. A green shoot appeared, pushing up through the dark soil toward the light and air. The shoot was bright green and full of life and energy. It grew quickly, faster than any normal plant, reaching up and up toward the sun with what seemed like eagerness and joy. It became a vine, a thick, strong vine with big, beautiful leaves that were the richest, deepest green Heungbu had ever seen. The vine climbed and twisted gently upward, wrapping around a sturdy wooden pole that Heungbu had placed beside it to give it support. It grew and grew, higher and higher every day, until it was as tall as the small house, and then taller still, reaching toward the sky itself. The whole village began to notice Heungbu's amazing, magical plant. Neighbors would stop by to look at it as they passed, standing at the fence and staring in wonder and amazement. They would shake their heads and talk among themselves. "I've never seen anything like it in all my years," the old grandmother would say. "It's growing faster than bamboo after spring rain," the farmers would comment. "It must be blessed by the spirits," someone else would whisper. And they were right, it was a blessed plant, grown from kindness and watered with love. As the days passed and autumn deepened and the air grew cooler, something even more amazing and wonderful happened. Flowers appeared on the magical vine, huge, golden flowers that were as big as dinner plates and bloomed with the most incredible, sweet fragrance that filled the whole garden and drifted on the breeze through the village. The flowers glowed softly, especially in the evening light. And after the flowers had bloomed for several days and then slowly faded and dropped their petals, fruits began to form where the flowers had been. But these weren't ordinary fruits, they were enormous pumpkins, the biggest pumpkins anyone in the village had ever seen in their entire lives. They were so large and heavy that they seemed impossible, like something from a fairy tale. The pumpkins grew round and fat and heavy, and they glowed with a soft, magical light that you could see at night. When the stars came out, like they had captured some of the light of the magical seed inside them. When the pumpkins were finally fully ripe, their skins turning a deep, rich orange color that was beautiful to look at. Heungbu knew it was time to harvest them. He chose the largest pumpkin very carefully, walking around it and looking at it from all sides, running his hands gently over its smooth, perfect surface. The pumpkin was so big and heavy that he couldn't lift it by himself. With help from his wife and his older children, all of them working together and grunting with effort because it weighed so much, they carefully cut the enormous pumpkin from the vine using a sharp knife. They had to work together to carry it inside the house, moving slowly and carefully, and they placed it on the floor in the center of their main room because it was too big to fit anywhere else. The whole family gathered around in a circle as Heungbu took their largest knife in his strong hands and carefully began to cut the magical pumpkin open. He cut slowly and carefully, sawing through the thick skin bit by bit, not knowing what to expect, his heart beating with excitement and curiosity. The pumpkin fell open in two perfect halves, and inside was not orange pumpkin flesh and seeds like you would expect from a normal pumpkin. Instead, the magical pumpkin was filled with the most wonderful treasures anyone could imagine. There were sparkling jewels of every kind, rubies as red as sunset, emeralds as green as spring leaves, sapphires as blue as the summer sky, diamonds that sparkled like stars, all glittering and gleaming in the lamplight and throwing rainbow colors on the walls. There were shining gold coins, stacked in neat, high piles, more money than Heungbu had ever seen in his whole life, more than he had ever dreamed existed. There were bolts of beautiful silk cloth in every color of the rainbow, deep crimson and bright azure and shining gold and rich purple and soft pink, all soft and smooth to the touch, finer than anything they had ever felt. There were bags of the finest white rice, enough to feed the family for years and years. There were fine dishes and cups made of porcelain, warm blankets woven from the softest wool, new clothes that looked like they were made for royalty, and more treasures than could be counted or even imagined. Heungbu and his family stood in shocked, stunned silence, hardly able to believe what they were seeing. Their mouths hung open. The children's eyes were as wide as the full moon. Heungbu's wife put her hand over her heart, and tears of joy and disbelief began to flow down her weathered cheeks. "It's a miracle," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "A true miracle from heaven." But the magical pumpkin vine had produced not just one pumpkin, but several enormous glowing pumpkins. Heungbu opened the second pumpkin with trembling hands, and it too was filled with wonderful treasures, more gold, more jewels, more beautiful things. Then the third pumpkin, and the fourth, and the fifth, each one containing more blessings and gifts than the last. Soon their small, humble house was overflowing with riches beyond their wildest dreams. Treasures piled everywhere, glittering and shining in every corner. But here is the most important part of the story, my little love, the part you must remember. Even though Heungbu now had more wealth than he had ever dreamed possible, even though he was suddenly richer than anyone in the village, his heart did not change. He didn't become greedy or selfish or proud. He didn't forget who he was or where he came from or what it felt like to be poor and hungry. Instead, his generous, warm heart stayed just as kind and loving as it had always been. The wealth didn't corrupt him, it only gave him more ability to help others. Heungbu shared his magical treasures with everyone who needed help. He gave food generously to families who were hungry, bringing them bags of the finest rice and grain. He gave warm clothes and thick blankets to people who were cold as winter approached. He helped repair the houses of his neighbors who couldn't afford to fix their leaky roofs or broken walls. He gave money freely to people who were struggling to pay their debts or who needed medicine for sick family members. He even paid for a new community well to be built in the center of the village so everyone could have clean, fresh water. And he did all this with joy and humility, never boasting or expecting thanks. Heungbu's own family moved to a larger, more comfortable house, nothing too fancy or grand, just a good, solid home with a roof that didn't leak and warm floors and enough rooms for everyone to sleep comfortably. But they lived simply and gratefully, never forgetting the days when they had very little and had to struggle for every bowl of rice. And every single day, Heungbu would gather his children and remind them, always be kind to others. Always help those who need it. Never become proud or greedy. That is the true treasure in life, a kind heart and the ability to help others. Now, when Nolbu, the older brother, heard about what had happened to Heungbu, he felt very curious and, if we're being honest, quite envious. He came to visit his younger brother, walking to the new house with his eyes growing wider and wider. He saw the comfortable home, the well-fed children wearing beautiful new clothes, the storehouse full of rice and grain and good things, and he could hardly believe it. His younger brother, who had been so poor, was now wealthy. "Little brother," Nolbu said, trying hard to hide his amazement and the jealousy burning in his chest. "How did you become so wealthy? Just a few months ago, you had nothing, and now look at all this." Heungbu, who held no grudge against his brother, despite how Nolbu had never helped him when he was poor, smiled warmly and kindly. He invited Nolbu inside, served him the finest tea and delicious food, and then he told him the whole gentle story about the baby swallow with the hurt leg. How he had cared for it with pure kindness and love for months. And how it had returned to give him a magical seed that grew into a vine with treasure-filled pumpkins. Nolbu listened very carefully to every single word, nodding his head slowly. But inside his mind was working very differently than Heungbu's kind heart had worked. He wasn't thinking about the kindness or the love or the caring that Heungbu had shown. He wasn't thinking about how beautiful it was to help a helpless creature. No, he was only thinking about one thing: I want magical pumpkins. 2. I want treasure and gold and jewels. I'll do exactly what Heungbu did, and then I'll have even more wealth than he has. So Nolbu went home immediately, his mind full of plans, and he started looking for a swallow. He searched his large property every single day, looking up at the eaves of his big house and in all the trees, watching and watching for swallow nests. But all the swallows he saw were healthy and flying well, swooping through the air and catching insects. None of them fell from their nests or seemed to need any help. Days passed, then weeks, and Nolbu grew more and more impatient and frustrated. "Why won't a bird fall?" he muttered angrily. Finally, Nolbu's impatience got the better of him, and he made a terrible decision. Instead of waiting naturally and patiently for a bird that truly needed help, he decided to force the situation and create his own opportunity. One day, he found a healthy young swallow perched peacefully on a branch, preening its feathers in the afternoon sun. Moving quickly, without thinking about what he was really doing or how wrong it was, Nolbu caught the bird roughly with his hands. In his hurry and carelessness and his greedy excitement, he accidentally hurt the swallow's leg on purpose, bending it until it was injured. There, Nolbu said to himself, feeling clever and satisfied, though deep in his heart he knew what he had done was wrong. Now I can bandage it and care for it, just like Heungbu did. And then I'll get my magical seed and my treasure. But there was a huge, important difference, my little love. Heungbu had helped a bird that was already hurt through no fault of anyone, acting from pure kindness in his heart and wanting nothing at all in return, except for the bird to be healthy and happy again. Nolbu had caused the hurt himself deliberately, acting from selfishness and greed, wanting only a reward and caring nothing for the bird's suffering. Nolbu kept the swallow in a cage in his house and bandaged its injured leg. He fed it food and gave it water, just as Heungbu had done, going through all the same motions. But his heart wasn't truly kind or caring. He was only thinking about getting magical seeds and wealth and becoming even richer. Every time he fed the bird, he was thinking, "Hurry up and heal so I can get my treasure." The swallow could sense this. Animals are wise and can feel the true intentions in a person's heart. The bird could feel that Nolbu's care came from greed and selfishness, not from love. When the swallow's leg finally healed, Nolbu released it impatiently, practically throwing it into the air. He waited anxiously to see if it would return with a seed, counting the days, barely able to contain his excitement. And just like with Heungbu, the swallow did come back several weeks later. It landed on Nolbu's expensive wooden fence and dropped a seed at his feet, a seed that looked almost like the one Heungbu had received. Nolbu's heart leapt with greedy excitement. His hands shook as he grabbed the seed quickly and hurried to plant it in the best spot in his large, well-kept garden. The seed that Nolbu planted also grew quickly, just like Heungbu's had, sending up a strong vine that climbed higher and higher each day. Huge pumpkins formed on the vine, growing round and fat and heavy. Nolbu could barely contain his excitement and impatience. He watered the plant, but not with love, just with greedy anticipation. He counted the days until the pumpkins would be ripe, imagining all the gold and jewels and wealth he would have, already planning how he would use his riches. "I'll be the richest man in the whole province," he thought. Finally, the day came when the pumpkins were ready to harvest. Nolbu could barely sleep the night before, tossing and turning with excitement. At first light, he rushed out to his garden and cut down the largest, most beautiful pumpkin, his hands shaking with anticipation. He carried it inside, barely able to wait, and immediately cut it open with his knife. Expecting to see treasures spilling out, imagining the gold and jewels that would make him wealthy beyond measure. But when the pumpkin fell open in two halves, what came out was not treasures at all. Instead, out poured silly, worthless, embarrassing things that taught Nolbu a hard but important lesson about his greed and his wrong actions. There was old, dry straw, completely useless for anything. There were tangles of thread, all knotted together impossibly so they could never be untangled or used. There were broken pieces of old pottery that couldn't be mended. There were torn rags that were too worn to be used even as cleaning cloths. And there were little notes written on scraps of paper in beautiful handwriting that said things like, "Be truly kind to others. True wealth comes from a generous heart. You cannot trick kindness into rewarding you. What you give to the world with a pure heart comes back to you, and kindness that expects a reward is not really kindness at all." Nolbu felt his face grow burning hot with embarrassment and shame. He opened the second pumpkin quickly, desperately hoping it would be better. But it was exactly the same: more old straw, more tangled string, more broken pottery, more messages about kindness and generosity. The third pumpkin, the fourth, the fifth, all the same. No treasures, no gold, no jewels, no wealth. Just reminders, over and over, that kindness cannot be faked or forced or done only to get something in return. And that it must come truly and purely from the heart. Nolbu sat down heavily on the floor of his house, surrounded by piles of worthless straw and broken pottery and all the embarrassing contents of his magical pumpkins. For the first time in many, many years, he really thought deeply about himself and his life and his heart. He realized what he had done wrong. He had hurt an innocent bird on purpose. He had pretended to be kind when really he was just being greedy. He had tried to trick the magic into giving him rewards he didn't deserve. And the magical seeds had known. They had seen into his heart and found it cold and selfish. The swallow had known the difference between real kindness and fake kindness. The magic had known the difference. And now Nolbu finally understood the difference too. Slowly, over the following months, Nolbu began to truly change from the inside out. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. He went to visit Heungbu again, and this time, instead of asking about wealth or treasure, he bowed low and apologized sincerely for being selfish and unkind all those years. "I'm sorry, little brother," Nolbu said, his voice humble and sincere, with real tears in his eyes. "I was wrong about so many things. I was greedy and selfish. I never helped you when you were poor, even though I had plenty. I hurt a bird just to try to get treasure. Will you forgive me? Will you teach me how to be more like you, how to have a kind heart?" Heungbu smiled warmly, his eyes filling with happy tears, and embraced his older brother tightly. "Of course I forgive you," he said with genuine love. "You're my brother, and I've always loved you. Come, stay with us. Learn with us. You are always welcome here, always." From that day forward, Nolbu truly tried to be more like his younger brother. He learned, slowly and with effort, to share what he had generously, giving food and money and help to those who needed it. He learned to help others without expecting anything in return, fixing his neighbor's broken fence just because it needed fixing, carrying water for an elderly woman just because it was the kind thing to do. He learned to speak warm, encouraging words instead of cold, selfish ones, to smile with genuine happiness at others' good fortune. Instead of frowning with envy, to offer help instead of hoarding everything for himself. Slowly, gradually, day by day and week by week, Nolbu's heart grew warmer and more generous and more loving. It wasn't easy, and sometimes he forgot and fell back into his old selfish ways, thinking only of himself. But Heungbu was always there beside him to remind him gently and patiently, never giving up on his brother. And the memory of those pumpkins full of worthless straw, and those notes about kindness helped keep Nolbu on the right path whenever he was tempted to be selfish again. And as Nolbu became kinder and more generous, he discovered something absolutely amazing that surprised him. He felt happier, much happier than he had ever felt when he was rich and selfish and alone. The more he gave to others, the more joy he felt bubbling up inside his heart. The more he helped people, the more meaning and purpose his life had. His life became truly rich in ways that had nothing at all to do with gold or jewels, rich with friendship, with love, with purpose, with the warm feeling of knowing he had helped someone. The two brothers lived peacefully together in the village from that day forward, helping each other and their neighbors, surrounded by the gentle hills and the beauty of the changing seasons. They worked in their gardens side by side, shared meals together at the same table, watched their children play together and become close cousins and best friends. And everyone in the village learned from their story that the best treasures in life, kindness, generosity, love, and family cannot be bought with money or stolen or forced. They can only be given freely, joyfully, from a warm and truly caring heart. And so, kindness bloomed like beautiful spring flowers throughout the entire village, spreading from person to person like gentle ripples spreading outward in a pond when you toss in a pebble. And everyone learned together that when we help others with pure, loving hearts, expecting nothing in return, the whole world becomes a warmer, happier, more loving place for everyone. And that, my precious little love, is the true magic that makes life beautiful. The air grows softer and more peaceful now, and the moon is glowing gently in the quiet night sky. The village is settling down for the night, lights going out in windows. One by one, as families tuck their children into warm beds and kiss them good night and tell them sweet dreams. Another story comes drifting by like a soft cloud floating peacefully across the evening sky. And let me tell you about a wise turtle and a quick rabbit, and the very important lesson they learned together about patience and perseverance and never giving up. In a beautiful meadow that stretched as far as the eye could see in every direction, filled with wildflowers of every color you can imagine and soft grass that swayed gently in the breeze like waves on a green ocean, there lived many, many animals who were all good friends with each other. The meadow was the most perfect place you could ever imagine, surrounded on all sides by a gentle forest with tall, ancient trees whose branches reached up high to touch the sky. A sparkling stream ran through the very center of the meadow, making soft bubbling and trickling sounds as it flowed over smooth, round pebbles that had been worn perfectly smooth by centuries and centuries of flowing water. The sun shone warmly during the day, never too hot, just perfect and comfortable. And at night, oh, at night the stars twinkled like millions of tiny diamonds scattered across the deep blue velvet of the sky. The moon would rise full and bright and beautiful, casting soft silver light over everything, making the meadow look absolutely magical and peaceful. In this perfect meadow lived a rabbit who absolutely loved to run more than anything else in the whole world. This rabbit was beautiful to look at, with soft brown fur that was smooth and sleek and shiny, long ears that stood up tall and proud and could swivel around to catch every sound from every direction, and powerful back legs that were perfectly built for speed and for jumping high and far. When the rabbit ran across the meadow, he was so incredibly fast that he was just a blur of brown against the green grass, almost impossible to see clearly. He could leap over fallen logs without even slowing down one tiny bit. He could dodge around trees with incredible agility, his body turning this way and that so quickly and smoothly. He could cross the entire meadow from one end to the other in just a few minutes, his paws barely seeming to touch the ground at all, almost like he was flying. The rabbit was very, very proud of how fast he could go, and really, he had good reason to be proud. He was definitely the fastest animal in the whole meadow. Perhaps even the fastest animal in the whole forest and the hills and valleys beyond. No one could keep up with him when he really got going. He loved to show off his speed to the other animals. He would zoom past them, calling out, "Watch this." And then he would run in circles around them so fast they would get dizzy just watching. All the other animals would clap and cheer and say, "Wow, rabbit, you're so fast." And the rabbit would smile proudly and feel very pleased with himself. Also in this peaceful meadow lived a turtle, and this turtle was very different from the rabbit in almost every way you could imagine. This turtle had a beautiful shell on his back that was dark green with intricate brown patterns on it like a work of art. Kind and wise eyes that had seen many years and learned many lessons, and 4 sturdy legs that were strong but not built for speed at all. The turtle moved very, very slowly, taking one careful step at a time. Never rushing, always enjoying the journey and noticing all the little beautiful things around him that others missed when they hurried by, the tiny colorful flowers growing close to the ground, the busy insects going about their work, the soft moss growing on stones, the way the sunlight sparkled on morning dew. One warm afternoon, when butterflies were floating lazily through the sweet-smelling air and bees were humming softly as they visited flower after flower gathering nectar, the rabbit was talking to some of the other animals near the stream. He was describing his latest run across the meadow. "I'm the fastest animal in this whole meadow," the rabbit said proudly, his chest puffed out. "I'm probably the fastest animal in the whole world. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can run as fast as I can. I'm like the wind itself." The turtle, who happened to be nearby munching very slowly on some fresh green clover, enjoying each bite and taking his time, looked up calmly and said in his slow, gentle, wise voice, "Speed is a wonderful gift, rabbit, and you should be proud of it. But speed isn't everything in life. Sometimes slow and steady and never giving up is just as good, maybe even better." The rabbit laughed, but not in a mean or cruel way, just in a surprised and amused way, because the idea seemed so silly to him. "Slow and steady? But turtle, you're so slow. It takes you forever to get anywhere. By the time you cross the meadow, the sun has moved across half the sky." The rabbit didn't mean to be unkind or to hurt the turtle's feelings. He just genuinely didn't understand yet that there are many different ways to do things, and they can all be valuable and good in their own way. The turtle smiled peacefully and calmly, not offended at all. "That may be true," he said slowly. "But I always reach where I'm going eventually, and I enjoy every step of the journey. In fact, rabbit, would you like to have a friendly race with me?" Just for fun, just to see what happens. It would be interesting, don't you think? The rabbit was very surprised by this suggestion. A race? With the turtle? The slowest animal in the meadow wanted to race him, the fastest? The rabbit thought this was the silliest thing he had ever heard. But the turtle had asked so nicely and politely that he agreed to do it. Sure, turtle, said the rabbit, trying not to laugh. We can race from here all the way to that big oak tree on the far side of the meadow. That will be fun. Well, it might take you all day to get there, but sure, let's do it. All the animals in the meadow gathered to watch this unusual race, curious about what would happen. The birds flew down from the trees and perched on low branches where they could see well. The squirrels sat on logs, their bushy tails twitching with excitement. The butterflies hovered nearby, their colorful wings catching the sunlight. The deer stood gracefully at the edge of the meadow, watching with their gentle eyes. Everyone was curious and excited to see what would happen in this strange race between the fastest and the slowest animals. The wise old owl, who lived in the very tallest tree and was respected by everyone for his wisdom and fairness, agreed to be the judge. He flew down and perched on a middle branch. "On your marks," said the owl in his deep, gentle, serious voice. "Get ready now. Are you both prepared? And go." The rabbit shot forward like an arrow released from a bow, like lightning flashing across the sky. His powerful legs pumped fast, 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 pushing him forward with incredible speed. He raced across the soft meadow grass, leaping over flowers and zooming past bushes in a brown blur. The wind rushed past his long ears, making them flap. In just a few moments, before most of the watching animals had even blinked, he was already halfway to the oak tree. He looked back over his shoulder and saw that the turtle had barely even started. He was still very close to the starting line. Just beginning to move forward, taking his first slow, steady steps. "This is way too easy," thought the rabbit, slowing down to a gentle hop. "This isn't even a real race. I have so much time. The turtle is so far behind that I could take a nice long rest and still win easily without even trying." The rabbit looked around and saw a perfect spot for resting, a lovely shady spot under a graceful willow tree whose long branches hung down like a green curtain. The grass there was particularly thick and comfortable, like a soft natural cushion. And the shade was cool and inviting, protecting from the warm afternoon sun. "I'll just rest here for a few moments," the rabbit said to himself, yawning. "Just a tiny little rest to catch my breath, and then I'll finish the race. The turtle is so slow that he won't catch up for hours and hours." The rabbit lay down in the soft, comfortable grass. He stretched out his body, feeling how pleasant the cool grass felt against his fur. He closed his eyes, just meaning to rest them for a moment. He felt the gentle breeze on his fur, heard the peaceful sounds of the meadow, the soft buzzing of bees visiting flowers, the gentle chirping of crickets in the grass, the rustling of leaves in the trees. It was all so comfortable, so peaceful, so relaxing. Before the rabbit knew what was happening, before he could stop himself, he fell fast asleep. He curled up in a little ball, his long ears relaxing and flopping over, his breathing becoming slow and steady and deep. He began to snore softly, completely unaware of everything happening around him, lost in pleasant dreams about running and jumping. Meanwhile, far behind, the turtle kept walking steadily. Step by step, slow and steady, he moved forward without stopping. He didn't get distracted. He didn't take breaks. He didn't give up even though the distance seemed very long. He just kept going, moving forward, one foot in front of the other, step after step after step. His progress was slow, yes, but it was also constant and sure. As he walked, he enjoyed the beautiful journey. He saw a lovely ladybug with red wings and black spots crawling on a green leaf, and he smiled at its beauty. He noticed some tiny purple wildflowers growing beside the path that most animals overlooked, and he thought how pretty and delicate they were. He felt the warm sun on his hard shell and felt grateful for the beautiful day. He was in no hurry, he was just steadily, patiently, peacefully moving toward his goal. Time passed slowly in the peaceful meadow. The turtle passed the sleeping rabbit, who was snoring softly under the willow tree, completely unaware that he was being overtaken. The turtle didn't wake him up or make any noise, he just kept going, slow and steady, moving peacefully and determinedly toward the oak tree. The turtle didn't hurry or rush. He maintained his same steady pace, never stopping, never giving up, never doubting that he would reach the finish line eventually. More time passed gently. The afternoon sun began to sink lower in the sky, painting everything with soft golden light. The shadows grew longer and longer. Some of the watching animals began to drift away, thinking the race would never end. But a few stayed, watching the turtle's slow but steady progress with growing amazement and respect. Finally, after what seemed like a very long time, the rabbit woke up from his deep sleep. He stretched all four legs and yawned widely, showing all his teeth. He blinked his eyes, feeling refreshed and rested from his nice long nap. The sun was much lower in the sky now, he must have slept longer than he thought. Then suddenly, like being splashed with cold water, he remembered the race. His eyes flew wide open. He jumped to his feet and looked toward the finish line at the big oak tree, fully expecting to see it far, far away with no one near it. But the rabbit couldn't believe his eyes. There, just reaching the big oak tree, crossing the finish line at that very moment, was the turtle. The slow, steady turtle had made it all the way across the meadow while the rabbit slept. All the animals who had stayed to watch were cheering gently and kindly, clapping their paws and wings and hooves, celebrating the turtle's amazing accomplishment. The rabbit jumped up and ran as fast as he possibly could, faster than he had ever run before, his legs moving in a desperate blur. His heart was pounding, but it was too late, far too late. The turtle had already won. The turtle had already crossed the finish line. By the time the rabbit reached the oak tree, breathing hard, his sides heaving with effort, the turtle was sitting peacefully in the shade, smiling his kind, gentle smile. But how?" asked the rabbit, confused and amazed and embarrassed all at once. "I'm so much faster than you. How could you possibly win?" The turtle looked at the rabbit with kind, wise, patient eyes that held no judgment, no pride, no meanness. "Yes, rabbit, you are much, much faster than me. No one would ever argue with that. But today, I kept going. I didn't stop. I didn't take a nap. I didn't get distracted or overconfident. Sometimes in life it's not just about how fast you can go, but about keeping going steadily. One step at a time, without giving up, without stopping, until you reach your goal. Slow and steady can win the race. The rabbit felt embarrassed at first, his face growing warm, wishing he could disappear. But then, as he thought about what the turtle said, he began to understand the important lesson. The turtle wasn't bragging or being mean or rubbing his victory in the rabbit's face. He was just teaching a gentle, important lesson about life. The rabbit's embarrassment faded, and he smiled sincerely. "You're absolutely right, turtle. I learned something very important today, something I'll never forget. Thank you for teaching me this lesson. I'm sorry I was so overconfident and boastful." From that day forward, the rabbit and the turtle became even better, closer friends than they had been before. They spent lots of time together, learning from each other. The rabbit still loved to run fast, and that was still wonderful, and beautiful speed is a gift. But he also learned to appreciate taking his time sometimes, to stop and notice the beautiful things around him like the flowers and the butterflies. To enjoy the journey and not just rush to the destination, and, most importantly, to finish what he started instead of giving up halfway through. And the turtle continued moving at his own peaceful, steady pace through life, enjoying each day as it came. Knowing deep in his wise heart that slow and steady and never giving up is a very good way to go through life. He taught the rabbit that persistence and determination and never giving up are just as valuable as speed and talent. And all the animals in the meadow lived happily together from that day on, each one special and valuable in their own unique way. Each one with their own gifts and talents, learning from each other and sharing the gentle beauty of each precious day. And they all remembered the lesson of the race: it's not always the fastest or the strongest or the most talented who succeeds, but often the one who keeps going, who never gives up, who takes one steady step at a time toward their goal. You did well today, my little love. Now let your eyes grow heavy, and let the night wrap around you like a soft blanket. Sleep well, sweet dreams, and rest deeply.